Good evening, SRA Nation.
We're excited to get this season off with a bang.
I think they're all taking tires. And on top of that, it's going to be saucier. It's going to be an all-out shootout to the end. He's got line of sight on these guys.
I commend you for the bravery getting this close to the diffuser.
All you gotta do is win the race. You don't have to lead a whole bunch of laps.
Oh, they're going to be side by side going into the next corner.
Oh, that's a big contact in the back of the field.
Can't stay out there like this.
He stayed in it!
We're off and away for SRA.
Hello, motorsports fans, and welcome to the Sim Racing Alliance St. Patrick's Day Spa 82 car big grid event. I'm Andrew Reif, joined now by Landon Drebis and Sam Ralworth. And boys, we got 82 minutes of, well, what can only be described as most likely to be some of the craziest action we're going to see all season here in the break week between the team series.
It's going to be a lot of chaos out here. 82 cars. The track's big enough, but it's going to be a lot for these drivers to handle. I'm excited to watch it, though.
It's a lot for us to handle. We're going to hop around and try to remember which car is which, but we'll do our best.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
I mean, talking on that note, I mean, we were doing some prep work here before the broadcast started, and, well, let's be honest, there's a lot to look at here on the race control side, so we're going to do our best to bring the action to you. But Landon, take us through a lap here. Spa-Francorchamps, legendary venue, so many corners, all the way right down to the end, 20 in total. Tell me about it.
It just seems like it goes on forever, and with these qualifying sessions, you're only going to get a few hot laps in there, so it's going to be up to these drivers to make them all count. Corner one, really tight hairpin in La Source. It's real tricky to make sure you get a good exit out going onto the straightaway, pointing towards the hill that is Eau Rouge and Radion. It's not easy with all these different kind of cars. Some can take it flat. Some it's going to struggle, and we're going to see these drivers' skill front and center as tonight as we see these drivers go through. The Kimmel Straight, you can get a really big draft with the driver in front of you. To position your car to make a move into one of our big passing zones, turn 7 in Lacombes, that tight section of sector 2, there's corners after corners after corners. If you can spot your braking zone perfectly and somehow find maneuvering or find your way around the car in front of you, you can set yourself great through Pohun in turn 12 and turn 13, 14, 15, these tricky 90-degree corners. You take a lot of the curbs, and that's where a lot of time is found. Turn 16, critical to get a great exit out of it down the straightaway. It might not look very straight on the track map, but it's flat out for most of these drivers here. And as they get into turn 19, our other big braking zone, big passing zone in turn 19 for the chicane that leads you back onto the front stretch to complete your lap here at Spa. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
I don't even know what to think about it. I can almost guarantee you right now. We were talking a little bit about it again before the broadcast started, but you know, Eau Rouge and Radion. Legendary corners, and only legendary drivers can overtake confidently there, but I can't help but feel like we're going to see at least a couple of attempts at a move down there today, so I am looking forward to it. I can almost guarantee there's going to be a car in the barrier at some point, though, of course. Talk about the bus stop as well. Prime overtaking opportunity for anybody looking to make a move up the field, and with a huge mix, I mean, we've got BMW M2 TCX cars out there, we've got Porsche Cups out there, we've got GT3s, GT4s, GT2s, everything is on the table here, and I think the only thing that remains a constant in this race is going to be that we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen during it all. I mean, even talking a little bit about what we saw in our race control, I can't really tell the difference between a lot of the classes on here because some of the icons are so similar. I'm not used to having so many different cars out on the track.
It's going to be chaos, and that's just from us sitting in our nice comfy seats here in the booth. These drivers, they're going to be dealing with the same thing down there on track, except their problem is These cars are going to have to be navigating traffic the entire way through. These GT2 cars passing these Porsche Cup cars and BMW TCX cars. They're going to be flying through them. And if they just happen to catch one up going, say, through Eau Rouge or Radeon, it's not going to be a good time trying to go through too wide through there. There's going to be some calamity, and we're going to try to catch it all on film. Can't wait to watch it.
Well, you know, always the most important thing here when you're one of the slower classes is just to maintain your line, and pretty much they always just say, you know, be predictable. As long as you can get that in your head that if someone's coming up on you very quickly, they're not in your race, just keep doing what you're doing, you should be fine. And then it's sort of up to the faster classes to be able to be, you know, smart about it. But I think we're going to see a lot of very exciting, you know, dives into some turns that maybe you wouldn't take if it was all GT3s. And I think that's probably going to be some of the best racing.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to here. Typically through our normal GT3 nights, we don't see this level of passing. We're going to see a lot of it tonight, and it's going to be fun to watch. These drivers are now already out on their out laps for the qualifying, so why don't we go ahead and tune on in?
It's going to be a lot to tune into. I see the first driver out, I believe, the very first. I've got the bonnet cam on right now. That is Michael Menning, who I believe is in the Porsche GT2, which is, I'll say, a bit of an interesting choice. It never really resonated with me personally, but for some drivers, they found a little bit of a home with that one. So I believe we have the GT2s, the TCXs going out first, which is a bit of an interesting order. But I suppose in a race like this, there's not really going to be a well-established one.
Yeah, it's all to play for here, and it's hard to. It was hard probably for these race directors to figure out an order for tonight as far as qualifying goes with a grid this mixed up. It looks like all they did was group up the BMWs and the Cup cars, which is probably the right thing to do based on speed alone. But that's going to mean that our session 2 with the GT2s or GT3s and GT4s is going to be absolute chaos.
And wait, is that the GT? I think that might be the Porsche Cup, actually. Again, I have no idea what I'm looking at here with my race control. I think we even talked about this before. We tried to establish what was what before we got started, and I'm still having a little bit of trouble. So I believe Menning is actually in the Porsche Cup. My apologies if I led you astray on that one. But it does kind of bring me to question now what kind of lap times we can expect out of each of the classes. Of course, we've got drivers of all variety of skill throughout these classes, so it's not impossible that we see some GT2s take away spots from the GT3 cars, especially making consideration for the Camel Straight. I mean, we talked about us and as the back straight as well with Blanchimont into the bus stop braking zone. There's a lot of opportunity for those GT2s to really flex their legs. Of course, it's no Paul Ricard, but it's kind of getting up there.
Yeah, right. As we're seeing on screen, these drivers, they're not finding a lot of gap out there. It's a big track around Spa, but even still, they're managing to stay right behind each other. Maybe there's some drafting tactics going on between teammates, but who knows? There's a lot of strategies at play here tonight, and I mean, just to show you that qualifying is just as competitive as we're going to see tonight in the race.
Yeah, that was a good point there, though, that we don't really have the, information on each one of these drivers in all of the different cars they're in. During a season in GT3s, obviously you can see some of their history and how they've been doing in practice. Maybe you might know them in some other series too, but there is no way, like in real life, where they can say, oh, this guy's come up through these series and did this, etc., etc. So we know some of these names, but who knows? Someone could be really fast in GT3 and killing everybody out there in the regular season, but trying out something a little bit more challenging today, and then someone else might surprise us. So it's going to be a little bit tough to come up with some sort of idea of a prediction on our side, which I think just makes it more interesting that we're going to be watching things sort of unveil as everyone else does.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing to note too. These drivers, I mean, typically in a GT3 series, we're seeing them, excel at the cars that they've selected for over an 8-week period. And for this race in particular, they decided to kind of branch out from their normal comfort zones. We're seeing, the likes of Michael Menning. He's our D1 leader right now in the championship, and he's in a Porsche Cup car, not any way similar to his BMW that he's used to dominating the series in. So he's going to have his hands full tonight as he deals with that car and its differences. But even still, we're having all kinds of different people, and they're adjusting on the fly. Maybe they didn't get enough practice in. They've only had a few days to practice for this one around Spa and these cars and this combo. It's going to be tricky for all of them.
I'm asking some big questions about this massive train that we've been following along for pretty much the entire first qualifying lap.
They're racing in qualifying.
You might just want to get some practice in, and that's Douglas Mitchell, who is well enveloped in that little pack. I see Curtis Lee was just in front. I believe they're not quite fighting in the same class. Kim immediately behind Mitchell as well, so they're still, out on their qualifiers. But I can't say that I expected to see anything like this. Of course, I believe with the M2s being out alongside the Porsche Cups and the GT4s, the Porsche Cups are going to be topping the times. So Michael Menning still sits on provisional pole for right now. But as you mentioned, this is a top-tier driver in the Sim Racing Alliance community. So there's really no surprises about this. We have a lot of other talented drivers who are just waiting and raring to get out of the pits here in about 3 minutes time. So I expect that time to come down from Michael Menning. He did invalidate his last lap, so he's not improving right now. And on such a long track, you only get a couple of laps to qualify with in the first place.
Yeah, that's critical. He's going to wish he had that one back, but around Spa, it's easy to do, whether it's the track limits on the top of Radion or if it's just going a bit wide in the exit of a braking zone. It's easy to grab that invalid limit. And around here, that's one of your maybe 3 hot laps you're going to get tonight. You got to make them all count. There's not a lot of track evolution going on today during the qualifying session, but even still with this amount of number of drivers on track, the track's going to rubber in at the end of a stint. You're going to want to be on track on a valid lap to set your optimal track time. So we see Dan Cran across the line. He improves by a couple of tenths. He's only still now 7 tenths behind Michael Menning. That's a good showing for him in the P Cup.
I'm someone who will certainly admit that I tend to use the qualifying as extra practice because I just don't have enough time sometimes during the week, or I don't have enough time overall in the game to really just jump around like some people might be able to do, jump in another track and get that lap time up in 2 or 3 laps. So I might still be doing the sort of practice that some of these guys are doing. At least that's what I would do, especially if I was in a car that I don't race all that much. But what about you guys? Do you have enough hours, do you think, that you could hop into another class of a car and make it competitive and actually go out there and set the times you're expecting?
Well, no, not really. I mean, when these cars, any seat time counts, and when you spend so much time in a GT3 car throughout the normal traditional season, to hop in, say, one of these Camaros with little to no downforce and little to no power, everything changes about the track. Nothing that you were used to is the same. So these qualifying laps, although these are the times that are going to set the grid for the event, they're still practice laps, and they're going to be improving on finding places where they can improve on throughout. As we see the Camaro here, he's top of the GT4 class now, P4 overall. That's pretty quick time.
It's kind of hard to tell if it's quick.
Yeah, no,
yeah, it really is.
Little to no reference.
Like we said before, the GT4s, this is going to be for a lot of drivers their last qualifying lap, and for Douglas Mitchell, that looks like it's going to be the end of his qualifying session, actually, as he definitely ran it off the course there. It's going to invalidate his lap. Speaking of, Michael Menning on an invalid lap right now. He's going to have one more to run. Dan Cran is in the same boat, so they've got the opportunity to improve, and with Dan Cran only being roughly 7 tenths behind provisional pole right about now, things are potentially looking up for him, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Of course, the P-Cups, we talk about very, very talented drivers in a slightly worse off vehicle. They could very well have a little bit of competition in the higher classes, in the GT2, GT3 category, so it's definitely a couple to keep your eye out for, especially when you just talk about them just driver to driver as well. We're talking about potential competition between classes, but oh no, Robichaud takes a bit of a spin there.
That is unfortunate. Commentator's curse in full effect already. I tuned to him for one corner and he loops it coming out of the
didn't even have to say anything.
It's tough out there, man. But
that's the curse of the P-Cup. That's not even us.
Yeah, exactly. No traction control in that Porsche Cup, obviously, and it's easy enough to do. You got to be really light on the throttle. I remember the last race I was in that at the Laguna Seca event, and it was chaos pretty much that entire 4 hours. Around this track, though, it's even more tough. These P-Cups, I mean, we see looks like Crowley putting up a little bit of a defense around that Porsche behind him. Once he's on a valid lap now, and he's on a good time, so he's going to want to keep that, not be interfered with by anyone, even behind them.
Something that's really great about tracks like this that are so big and also have such different parts, different sort of levels of technicality in some of the turns versus just sort of hammering the gas and going straight, is that with having the multi-class racing, these cars are not sort of all going to be one car is better at this track than another. You know, sometimes the short tracks do really well with cars that can turn very well, like a Porsche. Sometimes the longer tracks do better with something that's got a lot more grunt under it. But on a track like this, you may have times where you're seeing something like a Porsche Cup car running, you know, some of the faster cars you'd expect in a certain location. And that's always something you have to sort of contend with as a driver is, oh, I actually might be catching someone I don't expect to because I'm better around this sort of turn here.
Yeah, I mean, it could just come down to the cars, you know, where it's more comfortable. As we see Michael Manning showing that he's comfortable in that Porsche, handling it, whether it's sideways or or going straight. He's on an optimal lap now. He's already the leader, so he's looking to improve right now. As you see these final drivers in this first qualifying stint already getting their times in. Most of them are on their in laps or have already pitted. So Michael Manning, he looks like he just invalidated. As you see, he goes across the grass, showing his displeasure, getting all the airtime in the world. Rexy's yellow variant looking like it
well, that's
took
what I
a
was
ride
gonna say.
there.
Like, Rexy's green, Roxy's pink. What's yellow?
Manning.
Manning. Yeah, that
He's his
checks
own
out.
man.
Yeah, so that'll set our grid here for the Porsche Cup in the GT4 class, with Michael Manning setting the fastest lap in the Porsche Cup. He's got a 7/10 gap on Dan Cran for P2. Not to say that that's not gonna change up during the race with all the traffic and everything. It's still all to play for. In that GT4 class, we have the Camaro here. He set a quick lap, just a 10th ahead of Marecki though, who's we know is quick in D1. So it's still it's going to be a close race between everyone throughout the grid here. These GT3 drivers though and GT2s, they're out for their fast laps here tonight. So we'll see if we can't tune into one of their laps.
I believe it was the 745 leading us out for the remainder of the field. I think this is a GT2. It's kind of difficult to tell, and mostly because we discussed, again, something that we had to kind of go over between all of us. It doesn't actually show the manufacturer in race control, so we're kind of playing it a little bit by ear, because I particularly kind of rely on race control to tell me which manufacturer cars. It's kind of difficult to see from distance, but they'll get their first laps in.
Yeah, and make it more tricky, the GT4 or the GT4s and the GT2s all have the same color for us. So it's going to be tough. We see this absolute parking lot. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to have to move. I'm looking at the car that let us out right now. I've got it in the picture-in-picture. They're going through Ravage right now, well on their way through Sector 2, and it looks like that backup is going nowhere fast. So I am getting a bit concerned that we might get a little bit of a little bit of a stall.
Some interference
here
going on for sure. That's going to be really depressing if this guy who's, you know, planned his exit out the pits so well to try to get, you know, the clean lap comes up against traffic again, even still. But he's just getting out of Sector 2 here with the queue. Looks like they're just exiting. No, there's still a few more waiting their patient time at the chicane.
It's going to be close. He's moving down towards Blanchimont now. I'm still on board, and he's going to get the slow car ahead warnings almost for sure. Are the slow cars going to realize what's going on here? Are they going to be able to make the space for the bus stop chicane? There's not a whole lot of space to be made, so I'm really getting concerned here.
It's
You
gonna.
guys might have missed it too in the background. Somebody, I think, was glitching a little bit and smashed into another car. So
Oh, no.
there's already some people back in the pits, I think.
We hate that. Arjun, he's in that GT2 Maserati. He's coming around to finish his first hot lap. People are just starting their first. Gets a little bit sideways. He's gonna go P1, but I mean, with the lap compromise on exit like that, he's gonna look to improve that one as he comes across the line. Started seeing some more people set their hot laps. McChesney and the Porsche GT3 car. He'll go P1 for now. Actually, Mia just puts them off at the provisional pole.
Yeah, it certainly looks like people are out there all at, up to speed right now, but there's still some major gaps. So you can say your lap's not going so well. You might be able to get yourself back into one of those gaps and set yourself for another run at it.
Yeah, it's going to be crucial.
2:16.9 to start. That's a strong lap for the 909.
Yeah, and that's in a GT3 car. So showing these GT2 cars what's up. Maybe they just haven't set their laps yet. But I mean, we're seeing people already in GT2s like Lehman. We know he's quick. He's only down in P8. Maybe there's a bit of an advantage here towards the GT3 cars on this track. I don't actually know.
Well, I'd imagine as much.
We're going to see. Yeah, you'd hope so, right? But we're going to see it develop throughout the race and through qualifying here. Maybe these drivers are just compromising their outlaps.
Well, it's definitely going to be one of those times where you see a GT3 car is probably going to be the fastest around the track, but the GT2s will pass them or at least catch up to them on the major straights, and that's going to be something they both have to contend with. But something that's a little bit fun right now is just watching the overall track map and seeing the yellows pop up at different parts around the track. Who knows what's going on there?
Gosh,
It's
it
gonna be
is
impossible to catch up with
chaos.
Flores today.
It is absolute chaos. We're seeing some gaps form. People were actually diligent enough to create the gaps that they needed, but others are just right behind the people in front of them, not getting the clear track they probably want.
Fair number of people popping back into the pits. I don't think they really have enough time to get back out there and do a warm-up and then do a fast lap. I mean, we're right on the crisp there with like 3 minutes and 3.5 minutes or so, but you also have to deal with people coming up behind you and letting them pass. So I don't know if you're in the pits right now if you've got a chance to do another run.
Yeah, surely that's not the strategy around here. Seems like the track and positioning is more important around here than it is actually making sure you're on fresh tires. Finding clear track's going to be huge. Robinson actually goes provisional pole, beats Mia's time by just 5/100ths of a second, and Mia will go faster. Beats Travis's time by 2/100ths of a second. It's nip and tuck at the front here.
Indeed, it is. I'm seeing more improvements as well down the field. I was just on board with. Oh my goodness, they've already moved. I knew exactly who it was I was on board with for a while there. I believe it was Mothad who improved a little bit. Scott Fisher's up about 6/10 on their time too. Diaz moving up about 6/10. The original car we went out with, the 745, is improving their time. So it seems like I don't necessarily think that track evolution is a thing, but it's got to be a lot of clean air for some of these cars, because now all of them are up to racing speed. Whether or not you have traffic in the way, you know that the cars in front are moving at racing speed, and they, yes, might get in your way. But we did see a little bit of vehicles, specifically the one that I've got on board with right now, kind of running into the back of the parking lot that we saw over at the bus stop.
Oh man, that's got to be rough for them.
There are a lot of McLarens in this race, it looks like, at least up near the top. So I guess the track is set for a McLaren race here.
Yeah, there's some clear pace advantage for that car. It'll be interesting to watch as the race develops. Maybe it's a good qualifying car, but I mean it's going to be a long race here tonight. So just because it's quick in qualifying doesn't mean it's going to be a quick car overall.
Yeah, tires are tough on the McLaren, right?
Yeah, for sure. But they're the top 5, so they have clear pace around here.
It's mostly the fronts as well that go on the McLarens, which, I mean, in a track like Spa, I mean, there are certainly a lot of corners where it can be a little bit difficult to get that front bite. It's big. Oh, that's a big spin that I've just seen on the PIP. I didn't quite catch that. That was Gordon Beverly Jr. going for a little bit of a tour off on the runoff area, but it'll get away from it. But yeah, I mean, tire wear, talking about it for the McLaren, I mean, there are a lot of spots where it can be quite difficult to get that rear traction and make sure that's consistent. So if your fronts are the ones that are going first, at least you can count on the understeer being your biggest issue, because you do not want to get sideways here. And I see a little bit of a bump on my screen as well there at the bus stop chicane. No surprise.
Yeah, Rose was on a hot lap. She was up a couple tenths and just got a little bit of interference from the Maserati in front of her. Decides to kind of put the old bump and rub. Not going to do well for either of them, though, as she loses all the time she had. 27 seconds left to go, though, in this stint here. Everyone's going to be on their final laps now.
I did not expect to see a Porsche up there that high at this track. I mean, Spa is typically not a Porsche track.
Whoa.
Draven Doyle out here putting on a show. P2 overall.
That does not make me feel good. That's a Division 3 driver. I mean, talented, of course, but direct competition for me. Putting out a 2:17.6. That's a heater on Spa-Francorchamps.
Something
but
to
not
look
even
forward
talk about
to.
the pole time.
Yeah.
I mean, holy.
Well, something to keep in mind is that Spa is a favorite track for a lot of people, so they may have many more hours at this track than everything else. You look in divisions for a season, they might average out more, but here, who knows? It could be their special track.
Well, clearly the advantage would show here tonight. The drivers looks like they're finally coming across the line for their final laps. People are finishing up. Scott Fisher, he was up a few tenths, and he'll go P7 overall.
In a qualifying like this, you also expect, like, at normal Spa, you're probably not going to have too many chances to have a slipstream, depending on how many cars are out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys might have put in better lap times than otherwise you'd expect by just getting that, slipstream all the way down, say, the Kemmel, or, back through Blanchimont.
Seeing Robinson right now up about 4/10 on their time, looking to go P2. If they can find a lot of time in the bus stop, they could potentially go P1, but somehow I doubt that they're going to be able to pull off that feat. They're about a second down on the pole time, all told, with their previous hottest lap. So it looks like it is going to be a P2 finish for them. Actually, their delta comes down quite a bit, but it's not going to be enough for pole. So that's a solid improvement for Robinson.
P2 overall. That's a great lap from him.
Another McLaren.
Yeah, they've got pace for sure. As we see Carr on board with him, he's going 6/10 up already, and another McLaren. Seems to be a clear favorite out here. Gonna be interesting to see next week how the actual GT3 series goes.
Well, is that a GT2?
It might just be. No,
I'm wondering if a lot of people chose a GT2 McLaren.
It's hard.
I don't think
it's
so.
so tough to tell.
Pretty much the entire top 50, the top 16 places right now are dominated by GT3 cars, and as Jess Osborne comes across the line in 6th with a 218 flat.
Extremely fast.
Another Porsche up there in the top 10. So the top 10 right now is 3 Porsches and the rest McLarens.
Gosh. Showing a clear advantageous track. Maybe the BOP was a bit in the McLaren and Porsche's favor this week. It's going to be interesting to see how it all comes to play during the race.
The highest car is not a GT3. Guy Manperson with a 219 flat, which in a car that I cannot identify. I believe that's the Guy Manperson, the 599. That's an Audi.
Yeah.
It's an Audi, I believe, the GT2. So.
Yeah.
He's our front runner in the GT2 class, but they are properly intermixed with the GT3s. It's going to be chaos as we see that pace advantage going down the Kemmel straight. These GT2 cars just want to get around them.
See that livery I'm looking at right now on that Porsche, the Bud livery? Don't drink and drive on the back of that. I love it.
I've seen the back of that car a couple of times this season, I believe. That's Jackson Barty in the same Porsche livery that he's using for the Team Series. Quality driver, that.
Perfect. One thing that we always talk about for endurance races is that qualifying, it doesn't matter that much. You sort of just want to be out front or in the back so you can get away from any of the, chaos that can happen in the middle. But this isn't really an endurance race. 82 minutes isn't really that long. You can't get knocked out and come back within 5-10 minutes and be a couple laps down and make it work somehow later. That's just not going to work. So with this many people, qualifying does actually matter, and the middle being chaos is just that much worse because now the middle is almost 2 entire races of cars. I mean, we have like
Right.
40 or so usually in a GT3 race, so you've got double that.
Yeah.
I'm noticing it's curious. The server does not seem to be moving over to the race session, so stand by with us on that one, but it gives us all the more time to kind of look down the list here and see what exactly it is that we've got going on. So it's the number 33 McLaren up in pole position. And let's take a look down here at the timetables, in fact. I mean, the first car that's not a McLaren or a Porsche to qualify is, what is this, 1.4 seconds off the pace. That's the gap to the pole time, which is insane. But I mean, even talking about the pole time, the gap to P2 is 0.4 of a second.
People were obviously putting in some work for this race here tonight. I mean, Travis Robertson, that's a D1 driver, and Kanani there in the McLaren just best him by 4 seconds or 0.4 of a second, showing some clear pace there for sure.
Talking about BOP, you can see over on the right there, somehow the McLaren has plus 20 kilograms, and it's still doing that well.
Yeah. Maybe it needs a bit more of a nerf there on that one. It's going to be fun to watch.
Who's that in the background doing donuts?
Yeah, I saw that.
Poor says 912. I thought I saw
Having
there
a
for
little bit
second.
of fun out there with the no traction control.
Might as well do.
Yeah, put on a little show for us. As we check to see who's our front runners here qualified. That's Guy Manperson for the GT2 class. Just as we said, mixed in with the GT3s. Different pace in those cars. It's gonna be fun to watch them. But he's got a couple position advantage over the next GT2 car, so he'll be our key favorite to watch during the race. In our P Cup, our next pole position in their class is Michael Menning in the yellow Rexy, looking good out there, and he set a 228, which was good enough to set pole in his division by a couple seconds even. So,
Whoa.
and it looks like the server did forward, so we are all set to go for this race here tonight. I'm excited to look down, see if we can't get a bit of a grid walk, 82 cars log.
I'm gonna see just how far out I have to zoom. Oh my goodness, all the way out.
Seems like
Yes,
it goes
indeed.
on forever.
This is going to be one of the race starts of all time. I'll tell you that for free. We'll definitely have to get a fly cam over Eau Rouge Radion because I can almost guarantee that there is going to be some mega contact with at least a couple of vehicles. I mean, I'm just looking at the PIP right now on the program feed, and I'm zoomed out to the point where I can see all the cars, just barely, and they look like little tiny ants. They look like little tiny ants on the screen. That's just how many we have on the field here today. Of course, 82 separate vehicles, just an utterly ludicrous amount, and I have to say, very happy that we could be here for this. It's a little bit of a silly evening for a bit of a silly race, but you know, this is kind of what the community is about. But of course, before we get started with the race, we do have to give a huge thank you to our SRA sponsors and title sponsors for supporting us here at the Sim Racing Alliance, for making all of this kind of stuff possible, as well as support from Documize, a modern business solution for product management. You can go to documize.com to learn more today. Support from Retro Saga, a North American-based gaming company that provides accessories for your favorite classic systems, including Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, and much more. Enhance your retro gaming experience today at retrosaga.ca.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to all the drivers here that have, taken some time out of their Monday evening, whether it's they're the family's on spring break maybe, or they're just otherwise preoccupied. They decided to spend their evening with us, and all of you viewers for tuning into the stream. Should be a fun show here tonight.
So it looks like we have 78 cars on grid, at least according to what we just ran down. Still, obviously quite a lot, but I'm actually surprised with the way they're set up that they didn't go around the source. I thought that would have been the funnier thing, is having people start, at the back of the grid. Certainly when they come around on this outlap and they get ready for the race start, I think people will definitely be around La Source, still waiting for that race start.
Yeah, that's one of the things ACC does well here. They put the start-finish straight, or they put the starting line on the sort of after La Source. Kind of saves a bunch of drama as they go around that tight first corner. The finish line, though, is obviously beforehand in its traditional spot. Just something that I don't know if it's so realistic, if that's what they do in real life, but it certainly saves on some of the calamity. But it does mean that it does send these drivers too wide into Eau Rouge and Radion almost immediately. It's a nice test of their mental strength and willingness to go too wide on cold tires and full fuel.
I'm looking at the back of the grid here. You can see the picture-in-picture as the leader is almost at the end of the Kemmel Straight. The last car has yet to leave their grid box for the formation lap. And that's Mr. Sir all the way in the back, a highly renowned driver in SRA, starting from the very back of the grid, right behind Cryer and Caleb O'Neill. This is going to be an interesting start for them.
Yeah, some gamesmanship potentially going on there, some last to first challenge. He's in a GT2 though, so car's fast, clearly. Maybe just wanting to have a little bit of fun out here.
Invalid quality laps are my bet. That tends to happen.
Very well,
here.
I saw Mr. Sir on the qualifying leaderboard at one point, I seem to recall. So, as much as I'm inclined to believe that, he might have chosen to start from the back of the grid.
So also, I mean, one of the great things about this is how unbelievably realistic these are, and they look and they feel. But it is still a video game, and I am seeing someone kind of bop back and forth. Maybe they've already, left. You can see them dropping back into the pits there. So potentially we'll have some disconnects here or there, but it's just something that you gotta keep in mind. It is a video game, so we will have some of those little unfortunate happenstance.
Yeah, it's just part of it, right? I mean, we saw it the other week on the day 2 of the GT3 series, some technical difficulties, but just part of it. ACC, not exactly. It's really good as a simulator, but it's not the height of realism. It takes some liberties into making it an enjoyable experience for them all. I mean, you'd imagine this outlap to around Eau Rouge, the entire full-length circuit. People trying to warm up their tires, weaving in and around. If something very simple happened, you could get to the back of the driver in front of you, and it's a bad day for you both. Ruins a night of racing. So I do appreciate that, or you can take a little bit of you don't have to focus too hard, take a little bit of a break on your outlap, make sure you do what you need to do, as we see 3 cars in and amongst each other. Yeah.
So many drivers on the grid here today, that we could give a shout out to. I mean, of course, loads of people that are staples in the community. We've already called out Mr. Sir. We've already talked about Michael Menning. Of course, Jess Osborne placing in the top 10. That was a fantastic qualifying for him. Scott Fisher as well, a driver that we see frequently. And Jess Osborne actually just returned to the pits, so that might be a story I have to track.
I saw
Justin McKechnie
too.
is out there. Guy Manperson out on the grid. Al Latufo, Panzo Rigatoni, Regale Vitea, Selena Boonstra, who has been doing some phenomenal work for the intros and the graphics and all that stuff. Mike Gino out there as well for Ghost Rider Racing. Pat Cockcroft, Josh Damiani, Jason Allen. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it looks like we're filling up the pits right now too, with people popping back over there. Maybe that is a strategy. I've certainly done that in the rain here at Spa, where you just want to wait a little bit to come out of the pits before catching up to the chaos, and you can typically pass a whole bunch of people on that outlap.
It's about survival with a race like this. This many cars. Who knows what can happen on a lap 1? We're about to find out though, as these cars.
Track map.
It's so many cars. It's absolutely insane.
The back of the pack, because you get of course it says go in double file, and you get a little bit of that anti-accordion effect where the back of the field essentially needs to go at racing speed for a little bit in order to just get to their starting position before the leader actually gets to the line. So now we're here watching the back of the pack just form up at the bus stop as the leader prepares to get around the source and kick off the 82-minute race we've got going. I mean, it's an hour after the driver's briefing ended, and it is going to be the leader going around the final corner. That is Kanani in the 33 McLaren to lead the way from Robinson, with Martin behind and Draven Doyle. This could be a huge finish for any one of these drivers as we look at the lights preparing to go green here on the main straight, looking towards Eau Rouge and Radion.
Everyone's gridding up. It's 2x2. They cross the line and it's lights out and away we go. These drivers are heading down to the Eau Rouge 2x2. Kanani grabs this whole shot. He gets in front of Robinson, immediately makes his moment clear, and they'll get through Eau Rouge and Radion clean up front.
Is it going to be clean all the way through?
It certainly looks like it, although someone has a drive-through already.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think so. JP May, I believe, got a yellow flag, and there are so many cars getting
Saw a bit
now.
of a calamity there. I wonder if I can go back there. And we're seeing some more carnages. Trucks here get spun going into the Lacombes there. It's a parking lot. Absolutely everyone's trying to avoid the backwards cars.
I don't get it. This is completely unexpected.
Who would have thought 82 cars, something like this might have happened. The drivers did well at the start to get ahead.
Unbelievable.
Gosh, and our big train of cars has already started to disperse. Still a good strong field up front though.
What did we expect? I mean, I don't even know where to begin talking about stories. I'm just trying to watch something and see if anything happens. I mean, there's no real way to commentate on this. We're just here to have fun.
Yeah,
if we're being quite honest with ourselves.
These first couple of laps, we're gonna be flipping through here, trying to see what, if any, battles are going on. It's chaos though, absolute chaos. Oh, that driver is still in the pits. They're calling it quits, probably rightly so, as they got a lot of damage at the beginning.
My race control has called it quits too.
Yeah.
There were so many updates. I don't know if you guys got that too, but I'm not seeing any updates anymore on my race control. It's completely all by sight now for me.
It has given up.
Yeah, especially when you have this big of a grid and at the beginning you have such a long train of people going, 10, 15, 20 seconds slower around the track than they would like to. even if you kind of get a little bit of damage spin out at the beginning, you can catch back up to them. Some of the cars you see in the back there that might have had a little bit of spin that maybe didn't go into the pits, or maybe they did and they fixed 5-10 seconds or something, they might still catch the back of the pack.
Yeah, absolutely.
That might be why we saw some of them just go into the pits immediately. They'd rather just not risk being a part of the Eau Rouge Radion complex during lap 1. I mean, especially at the back of the pack. If we're talking about the cars up near the front, again, you know, Draven Doyle, Mia Rose, for those kinds of drivers, they probably expected to get through relatively cleanly. You know, for any of them, the risk is not even close to worth the reward. So for Kanani to stay out in front, I mean, that's phenomenal. Robinson stays in second. Draven Doyle is not too much farther down the field. It wasn't the start that he wanted, but he's still in the race, and that's something that cannot be said for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, this is
Unfortunately, the pits don't actually open, you know, on that opening lap. So if you did have to teleport back there, then you didn't really solve the rule of having to go in for one pit. However, I think it might be a good big brain strategy move that if you're near the front of this pack, of the overall pack, but you're really kind of fighting too much, if you pit early, you might be able to get out into some free air and have a whole bunch of clean laps if not too many other people are doing that.
Yeah, it's a viable strategy for sure. So we see these drivers still make their second circuit around this around Spa.
Yeah. We're working to try and get race control back. I'm a little bit concerned, though, that if I close it out now and try to reopen it, I might not be able to connect at all. I can still control the cameras, thankfully, so we can kind of get some shots for you, but I have zero information apart from which driver I'm going on board with, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
So do bear with us on that one. But honestly, how else did we expect this to go? I mean, with the lap 1 and then race control braking, I'm seeing a little bit of a move in the back there. Again, I can't tell where any single driver is on my screen, save for my memory of liveries. And I'm gonna be honest, my brain is not that big. I know a couple of them, but certainly not as many as I would need to know to track this entire thing. So we'll just see where we go from here.
So Mia Rose, I believe she's going to have 1, maybe 2 more laps after this to serve her drive-through. But we talked about this beginning before the race started. It is supposedly a 50-second line-to-line drive-through penalty. 50 seconds is a lot of time. Maybe not so much here at this track as others, but that's not fun to serve.
No, you're gonna wish you had that one back, and I think she picked that one up at the start. So, really unfortunate for them, as it's gonna affect the finish of the race. I mean, they were up there at the front. They're still there at the front, P3 with the fastest lap. They have the pace for it. Just little miscue at the beginning there. Really unfortunate for them.
Yeah, but what's the fastest lap right now? Like 2.5, something like that? I don't know if we have race control to tell us, but I mean, you know, this is what happens the first couple laps is, you know, like the fastest lap is nowhere close to even being consistent with what you expect to happen later. So no one really knows what's going on. But in the back, you start having like 3.5 minute laps because you're just sitting in traffic, just waiting, and there's nothing you can do but maybe make some hot-headed moves and try to be more aggressive than the other ones around you.
I've seen some blue flags already on the Kemmel Straight as well, so there's no telling. For the drivers that are in the back right now, it's basically just pull over and wait for the cars behind to go by the video game. You're really hardly even going to have an opportunity to get up to racing speed before too long. I mean, looking at the track map, fortunately for those drivers, there is still some space to be afforded, but with the pack so tight, I mean, you talk about lap times, once that leader does catch up to the back of the pack, which I'm assuming is going to happen for the M2s and for the GT4s, you're going to get those leaders coming up on the back. The blue flag is going to cost you a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, luckily there are a bunch of areas on this track where there's just a very long straight and it's very wide, or at least it's wide enough that you can pull over and just sort of slightly lift off throttle, or maybe, you know, even just stay on throttle depending how slow you are compared to the other cars around you. So at least it's not so bad that you're stuck in these tiny little turns, maybe on just like a street track or, you know, some smaller track like Laguna Seca. There is space here, so hopefully you're not losing too much time
So I've just figured out that with my race control, I can either I can get the wing cam, I can get an alternative cam, but only of Dan Cran. It will not change to an alternative cam of another driver. So all I've got is the heli cam for pretty much the remainder of the race, unless you want to see Dan Cran's wing cam for practically the entirety.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, yeah,
we're working some
race
technical
control was
difficulties
not
on my
built
end.
for this.
Yeah, it's not great. Might just have to run the old-fashioned way through ACC. But in the meantime, we're seeing some impressive battling going on. Looks like Mia Rose is finally getting her drive-through out the way. Yeah, and Kanani already coming up the lap traffic from the GT4s.
Yeah, although it's not real lap traffic, it's, they had crashed earlier on and
Sure.
they're getting out of the pits and such. So, I mean, it is Spa, so it is long enough that even with a few seconds per lap faster than the slowest ones here, it'll still take a fair number of laps to actually catch up. However, that would be sort of at full pace. So, starting right now, like I was saying, in the back of the traffic there, they're not going anywhere close to their full pace. So certainly the leader is going to get closer to the back of the pack than they would with a much smaller grid, but I still think we have a few laps before it starts to be real blue flag traffic.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, this Camaro is getting swallowed up by this traffic here. I feel bad for them. I mean, it's not a fun position being a GT4 surrounded by such faster cars, especially around here. Feels like there's never a break. These straightaways, though, are the perfect opportunity to kind of pull off and find your space. But there's a big train of cars coming up behind him.
Ooh, and some yellow back there, down by Stavilo. Seems like they're getting off the track though. It doesn't look like anyone else has been affected, so maybe it was just a quick spin and they're just having to wait for the entire rest of the group to slowly trundle by.
I do not envy that position whatsoever. Oh, that's unfortunate for them.
This is an interesting one though, because I'm looking at it. It's an M2, which is very, very challenging to spin. Even in the corners, I can't speak for the setup here on spot, but it does not look like a corner exit type of spin or like a power oversteer kind of moment. It almost looks like maybe they got run off the track, and finally, I think they have an opportunity to rejoin.
Maybe.
This is Douglas Mitchell, which is one of the admins.
Oh,
He
no.
might just be calling it quits. I have yet to know that one. But just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, he was our pole sitter for the M2 division there. There's only a few drivers though, but he's doing the right thing and waiting his time to get turned around, but that's going to send him all the way to the back of the train.
Well, I think based on how far ahead he was when he spun, he probably was already being blue flagged from being down from a damage. So I imagine letting all those blue flags go, he maybe just got a little bit intimidated, or someone going by too fast was just not smart enough and didn't, pay attention. It might have knocked him off.
It could have been.
I mean, it's not necessarily the widest track in the world. So you got cars that are going to come up on you. Like I said, in the M2, you're the slowest car on track by quite a margin. Those GT3s are a fair bit faster than those M2s. The closing speeds are going to be a little bit ridiculous at times. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a ridiculous prospect for them to have, gotten a little bit of a love tap in the back from one of the faster cars in the traffic.
It seems at some point we should probably just have like a fixed camera. I mean, even just in real life, and so it just comes up in every other sim around, a fixed camera to the top of Radion and Eau Rouge, because that is just some of the most fun to just, what's he going to do this time? Oh, two cars next to each other.
Yeah, the cars are at their absolute limits in grip and, and speed there at the top of the hill. And if you hit it right, it's a magical corner where, you feel like you nailed it, but it's a really tight margin there. You got to thread the needle between the two curbs there. You hit it over too much and you're off into the wall, and we've seen some bad examples of that.
Yeah, tell me, Landon, how often is it that you hit Eau Rouge and Radion right?
Far too often.
For me,
yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but for me, I hit it right maybe once in every 10 goes at it, and the rest of the 9 times I'm in the wall.
You see, that's what it feels like. And the last time that we were running we were running Spa here as part of the League Series, I was in a Ferrari, and it was the first season of the 296, and I feel like every time at the top of the Radion, the car would just get light and you'd lose the rear end, and I was in the tire barrier more times than not, to the point where I just had to quit out of the spa race that night. It was not fun. Don't recommend that. And we're not seeing a lot of Ferrari representation. Moffat, and he's in P10 though, and so showing that there's some clear pace if you can manage to wrangle that car down.
I think that if anyone looks at the history of all of their laps at this track, and they have more valid laps than invalid laps, they're a witch and they should be burned.
I can agree to that.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Either that or
just
their
not
average
possible.
lap time is in the 2-minute 30s with a GT3 car.
Hey, I can do that and be invalid.
That's true. That's very true.
I think that's more what happens to me is, just getting too far wide, usually to the inside at the top of the hill, and invalidating my lap. And luckily, a lot of times it'll say you didn't gain any time, and so I kind of get away with it. But, in a 60-minute race, there's a good chance you get too many warnings. In an 82-minute race, there's a great chance we're going to start seeing some penalties as the race goes on, with all those warnings coming from probably specifically that turn.
Yeah, that's a good point to note there. We're going to be seeing them come through. It might be worth to have a little counter go on. I mean, we saw it last week, obviously, with a ton of drive-throughs coming through, even in the top divisions. Around here, it's going to be easy to pick up a drive-through, and before you know it, you're going to be back there with your race hindered.
And I think worth noting again, it's going to be, well, for lack of a better word, it's going to be phenomenally difficult for us to realistically track a lot of the stories for most of these racers. So do forgive us if we kind of miss out on some stuff. Like I said before, we don't see the yellows on race control either. So we're pretty much along for the ride, as many of you are as well. But one thing that we can say for sure, Travis Robinson closing up on the leader right now. This is probably going to be the one that we're following because, well, it's for the lead in an 82-car race. But we're only like 12 minutes in. 12 minutes in, guys. What do we think is going on so far? What's your highlight of the race?
I mean, we did see a bit of calamity on lap 1, but for the most part, most of these drivers are still pointed forward. They're still on the track, making a good effort, and I think that was huge. 82 cars, right? You're bound to have some sort of calamity, and the drivers that were able to make it through, they're still on for a good race. And honestly, that was impressive just to see all those cars go through Eau Rouge and Radillon.
Yeah, about that. There's yellow back there again.
Naturally.
Right at Eau Rouge, yeah, we saw them.
I see that car is RTG'd immediately. That's starts with a 6. That might be Kyle. No, that car is in the pit now.
It looks like Moffat,
Oh,
maybe the
no.
Ferrari.
I absolutely cursed him.
I was gonna say you definitely just cursed him. But I mean, so something if you are trying to find some stories to sort of watch here is something I like to do when when I'm commentating and maybe someone else is talking and has something more to say about the actual image going on. Is I just like to look at the track map, and because we have all these different colors, it actually does make it somewhat easier to say, hey, look, there's a patch of green altogether. So that's probably a story developing. That's a group of people in the same class that are actually going to be fighting. And then, hey, look, there's a patch of red, and there's a patch of gray, and a patch of blue. And so as they're all sort of spreading out away from the giant single line, we can actually jump between those stories, I think, individually by class. That actually might be something we can do. And someone has a stop go 30 already. That's fun.
That had to happen at some point.
Gosh.
That is miserable here. I mean,
for that.
we talked about it earlier, 50 seconds line to line, but it's not even just that it's 50 seconds. If you know this track, if you know the pits, it's a two-way, or basically it's 2 lengths of a pit. You drive Trundling down, all the way down to La Source, and then it sort of lets you go for a little bit, and you see the light and go, oh, okay, we can start going. Oh, no, wait, there's still another half to go. And if you're doing that, and then you have to stop for 30 seconds, I might go, I don't know, have a drink, go to the bathroom, come back later, see what happens.
Right. Oh, we see a bit of bonkage. Gino gets turned a little bit by the McLaren, who goes deep on his brakes. They self-right each other. Gino's going to stay straight. The McLaren behind them that gave him the bumps going to stay behind him. Respectful driving from them after they get all straightened out. But it was a real cluster that entire way through Sector 3, as we still see two by two. Even in front of them, we saw the GT2 cars between Guyman Person and Arjun. They were side by side going down the Blanc-Chamotte straight.
I
They
think
came out
Gino deserved it.
surprisingly unscathed.
No, I think Gino deserved it.
He deserves. Oh no.
No particular reason. just no. Him and I. He's a good guy.
Yeah,
Oh,
for
he is.
sure.
I did like seeing that the yellow Rexy and the Grello Porsche are right front, back to back on those guys, and I love
Oh,
seeing those cars
yeah.
race.
Looking good that the two Porsches there as a group.
Yeah, I'm a big Porsche fan, and I love the classic liveries. I love the new liveries that get a lot of fame, and so the plaid Pfaff, which is now a McLaren, is dead to me. But Rexy taking up
Dear.
that stand.
Yeah, that livery is amazing.
As you can see, I've been on board. I see you have Michael Menning, who's just in front of Selena Booster, who I've been on board with the last couple of turns. It got a little bit hectic there for Menning, getting stuck up behind that M2 for a moment there at Rivage. But looks like they sorted themselves out. That's the kind of quality driving you like to see. And honestly, for Selena to stick with this, I know it's a GT3 versus a Porsche Cup, but this is still one of the top drivers in the Sim Racing Alliance. Selena Booster still on controller, by the way. If anybody not familiar with this driver, on controller, Division 3 driver of 6 divisions. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, no joke. That's one thing to note too. Menning, he's our leader of our Porsche Cup division there, and he's got a healthy lead over the next driver in P31 of Dan Cran. So putting on a show out here, still making moves around these GT3s and GT2s, who the GT2s I thought would have better pace around here. The highest one we're seeing is P13, so maybe the extra power and less downforce is actually not the recipe around here, and the GT3s just have the upper hand.
Well, I think there's one thing going on that's probably dealing with both of what we were just talking about. Why maybe you might be able to keep up with a faster driver, and why maybe a faster car may not be as fast. And that's essentially just the pack and how long it took to spread out. So you can't really use all that extra power if you have to brake halfway down the straight because there's such a large group in front of you. So those GT2s don't really get their benefit. Same way, someone might be able to keep up with someone faster if every time they would get away from you, they're stuck in traffic and you just catch back up. So certainly, I think we'll see that change as the race goes on, but we'll also see things change, like if the 911 Cup cars, if they start having their tires degrade before everyone else's without having that traction control, then maybe you start seeing Selena come back and take this fight right back to him.
That's right. Yeah, those tires are definitely starting to show their limits. The strategy around here tonight, I mean, you see him get a bit sideways. It's gonna be a pretty much one with a fixed pit timer and with fuel necessary. You're pretty much at one full stint here. So we might see some drivers take these tires. Porsche Cup cars come to mind. With their lack of traction, their tires definitely gonna be wanting a brake. But these GT3 cars, it seems pretty simple. You just come and get your 1 liter, even if you do stop for 25 seconds. That 5-second difference might be what's needed to get the upper hand on the car in front of you.
My big question would be, do you take the standard 60 minutes sort of brakes and tires and all that sort of stuff, or do you go for something that's a little bit closer to what you would run in an endurance race? I mean, certainly you wouldn't want to run the brakes that last 12 hours versus a couple hours or whatever, but it is still something to think about. Maybe you lose a little bit of pace, but you gain a little bit of endurance, and that actually will matter in this race.
Right.
I can't imagine. I mean, 82 minutes. I don't know. I feel like most of the drivers, especially given the nature of the race, I mean, what are the odds that you actually get away from it with no damage, right? I mean, there's just so much to question when it comes to strategy. Coming into this one, of course, you got 1 liter splash and dash. That's a pretty normal strategy many of these drivers are familiar with. But talking about it from the outright perspective of coming into this, you cannot possibly expect it to be normal. You know for a fact that things are going to be weird during this race, and more likely than not, you're probably going to take some damage. So I feel like, thinking about the strategy too much is probably not going to be good for their general mental health.
Yeah, exactly. I always find that if I thought about the strategy for even half a second, not on a straightaway, I was find myself in a wall pretty easily. Speaking of, I think we had a driver there.
The 886 that was.
Yeah.
See if I can find him. That's Gilchrist, Ian Gilchrist for Plan E. They're going to drop all the way down just about to the back of the pack, which I might add, we've lost 10 cars since race start. So sometimes people talk about it can be quite the impressive feat just to finish an endurance race. We're talking on the scale of, 8 to 12 to 24 hours. We're only on for 82 minutes. It's not even been half an hour, and we've already lost 10 vehicles off the track. So I think it might actually be an accomplishment for many of these drivers just to cross the finish line.
Right.
Well, that's again what I was talking about earlier, where it is a little bit of a longer race than usual, but it's not long enough to catch back up over the course of however many hours that endurance race does. So you still are sort of in that realm of, oh, there's not enough time to catch up, so I'll just head out because there was too much damage.
Yeah, you sort of use that time to your advantage, and if you're going to make a mistake, make it early. It's still a bit of a sprint race here, though, tonight in our big grid event. These drivers don't have a ton of time. If they start, having some damage that's too, insurmountable to fix and come back out, you can still find a race if you get back out there. But I mean, we're seeing already 10 drivers leaving, just calling it quits and moving on to next week.
Something I mention a lot in my my commentating, although I have been pushed back a little bit on this now that more people are using apps to help them, but usually, in this sort of sim racing is you are your own strategist. You don't have someone in your ear, usually, telling you, what to do, what to change, etc. And if they are, maybe even if they tell you what to do, they're not doing it automatically for you. So you still have to be able to be in the middle of this race and switch over to, your other menus and play with this. And that can be a little bit difficult to do. And then once you're actually in the pits, you have to remember, oh, don't speed, don't do this, don't do that. And it's very difficult to do all that while you're also trying to be the racer. So it's always more impressive just to see any sort of strategy come out of that.
Right.
I mean, of course, compounded for this race, where you've got blue flags, and not just blue flags, but blue flags of all different varieties. We talk about doing, for instance, the 4 hours of Laguna Seca, we had Cup cars and we had M2s. When the Cup cars came up on the M2, you knew exactly roughly how fast they were going to be going, where they were going to be braking, etc., etc. This track, you get a blue flag as a GT3 car, and you have no idea. Is it a GT2? Is it a GT4? Is it a Cup car? Is it an M2? I've got no idea where they're going to brake. I have no idea what kind of speed they're going to carry. And then you're focusing on potentially all that kind of stuff. Maybe you took some damage, and you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But you don't have time to think about all that because you're in traffic. You're fighting right now. Things are going on all around you, and you're never going to get a break from that. Because take a look at the track map. There's just so much going on. And speaking of, the 515. Looks like they've got a yellow flag there, exit of Lacombe. I didn't quite catch that one, but I'm sure...
It's like they get back going.
Yeah, probably went okay, with no problems whatsoever. Yeah, everything was happy, sunshine and rainbows, and exactly none of those things. I'm sure it was terrible.
It's St. Patrick's Day. Of course there was rainbows.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
There you go, yeah.
Well, it was St. Patrick's Day, but that's not important.
Neither here nor there.
Oh,
it's our
goodness.
St. Patrick's Day event, so it still counts. We're
It's close
celebrating
enough.
it today.
And
I'm
all
starting to
those cars
see-
not wearing green will get punted.
Oh, maybe that was the key. I'm starting to notice some cars pulling into the pits. Austin Red looks like they're fairly high up on the list of pitted cars, but then again, I can only see roughly 22 vehicles in my overall, just in general, so I can't really tell who all is pitted and who hasn't. It's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay sort of tuned into the front here, but there's probably a lot of action happening behind without race control working. It's hard to keep a tabs on all of it. So we saw some, looks like GT4 traffic just getting out of the way of these GT3 drivers.
I mean, I was expecting it to be difficult to track even with race controls helps.
Yeah,
So now for us to basically be on our own,
we are going through it, that's for sure.
it's a whole thing. The silliness will consume you, and it has.
Oh, it's chaos up front. Let's see if we can see two. It's 3 wide going into the turn 10. They sort each other out. The McLarens are going to go by each other. That Bentley in the middle there has some obvious straight line pace, but through the corners is an absolute tractor. Not able to keep the pace of the McLarens. They'll fly right by.
Oh my goodness. I've just tuned in to Panzo Riccatoni. There's a massive group of cars, blue flags waving at the end of the Camel Straight, and that's not going to be a 3 wide that works out. 2 cars go spinning around.
Oh, and they're
That's going to be a
parked up.
double yellow flag. Oh no. And I think one of them may have just RTG'd or left the server entirely. That might be another car down.
You know, I will say, I think one of the cameras we should try to get here is pick one of the slowest classes and get the camera that looks right back over their wing, and make sure we're doing that when the faster classes are coming up. I want to see from behind their wing on like the Camel Straight or Blanchimont as all those cars come up, and just see what that real difference in pace is.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We'll grab some as. Who do we
Well,
have?
as I mentioned before, I can only take the wing cam for Dan Cran. That's the only car I can get alternative cams of, so...
That counts.
Well, Dan Cran's not in, he's not in a slower class of car. Well, I guess he is in a Porsche Cup.
Yeah.
But Dan Cran's not a particularly slow driver. I mean, sitting in 33rd right now.
He's not gonna get past too easily, that's for sure.
No, I wouldn't count on it.
So we tab.
But hey, it's always nice to join in with our friend for a little bit.
Ooh, someone just teleported back after some yellow at the bus stop.
See in the pit, that's the 634. That's Kent Van Sickle, I believe. If memory serves, that's a driver that I usually have the privilege of watching on the Division 5 broadcast. Was actually having a fairly good race up until apparent recent events. We'll see how things develop for them.
On the track map, it certainly looks
God.
like... Oh, jeez.
What just happened there? I looked over to the program feed for a second. I just saw 2 cars getting absolutely destroyed. That was Ian Gilchrist, and who else was that?
Yeah, I missed exactly who that was, but there was some calamity over top of Eau Rouge. That can happen with the multi-class racing we have here. Not a great showing from them, but unfortunate for them, as it looks like one of them is going to return back to the garage immediately.
Simultaneously, we had yellows at La Source and Blanchimont.
I called Martin Smith. Oh,
And
Regale
Chrome.
Vita. Yeah, Regale Vita out of No Name, I think that was. And then again at the
Ooh.
top of Radion Eau Rouge.
Seen some
That's a
more
277.
We just keep
You catch
bonking
that?
into each other. Yep, I got that here on the feed here. Just top of Radion, they were going 2x2. Not enough space for either one of them, and they started hitting each other's. We're seeing all
Maybe the
types
right
of
play,
carnage.
Maybe the right
Yeah.
play to RTG on that one.
Yeah.
373 yellow flag.
And the bus stop again.
This is still a trouble with my race controls. I'm frantically scrolling through my entire list of numbers trying to see which car is the one that I need to click on in order to find the yellow. There's just so much happening simultaneously.
That's right. It's all popping
Yeah, I mean,
off.
especially imagine trying to rejoin safely when you've got 50, 60, 70 cars that are coming by. You're just waiting. Can you go now? Can you go now? Are you even on a part of the track where you can do a spin around and get going? And I mean, obviously some of them look worse than others. Maybe they should have held their brakes a bit more and they shouldn't have gone, but this is a tough time to try to figure that out.
That's what we saw McCullough not so long ago, of course, at the top of Radion. And, you know, kind of facing backwards on the track almost. And you know that cars are coming up at speed. There can be a gap, but you never really know. Because you can't see. You simply cannot see. You might have the track map up, but then the driver down the hill won't be able to see. So it's quite impossible. I see it. The 826 and the 328 appear to have had an incident, I believe. That is Curtis Lee involved in that one of our frequent race directors.
Yeah, putting this race on. We like to see him have a good showing just because it's you know, lets him and also enjoy some of the races that he sets up. But that one, unfortunate, comes together in the chicane.
Well, then again, if they have too good of a race, then it's rigged.
Oh,
You
exactly.
know.
Yeah, can't do too much.
Yeah, it's just
You
unfortunate.
know, we were just watching one of those M2s get surrounded by the Porsches. I imagine Porsche Cup, but who knows? That was sort of perfect time to watch the speed difference. It was really incredible going down, you know, Blanchimont into the bus stop, just watching how fast they caught up to him. But then they all kind of come to the same braking zone, so you really have to be careful on what you do there.
just seen Scott Fisher, who I believe was one of our top 10 qualifiers, just came out of the pit in 27th, but I don't see that they fulfilled their mandatory pit stop. So I wonder
we just saw
if
that.
they maybe messed up their strategy.
They had a drive-through that they were serving.
Oh, did they serve it? Oh,
yeah,
no.
that's right.
Well,
Unfortunate.
that explains that one.
So I mean, if we were keeping track, I think that's 2, but there's also a stop-go 30. So yeah, I mean, we still have 50 minutes left.
Fewer penalties than I would have anticipated. Although, in fairness,
Still
if we were
early
having live
days.
stewarding on this race, then that might not be the case.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Letting the game sort of take control of tonight's Destiny without the live stewarding. But that being said, there's still the best standards of driving to be upheld. Seeing still some really close racing, so it's nice to see for sure.
We must have missed it. Travis Robinson fell behind Jeff Spangler in the top 3 here.
Yeah.
Did not notice that.
It's pretty cool seeing the teammates with the same liveries there chasing after car.
Yeah, there's also another one of the same team up there, Travis Robinson and P3. So they're having a good showing out here tonight.
All I'm going to say about it is, with no rules on the table, it's entirely possible that somebody could, miss their braking marker and absolutely spear the lead car and make room for their teammate. I'm not saying they should.
There's a potential.
It would be a horrendously unfortunate accident if that were to happen. I mean, no one would ever want to see that. It could happen, though. Of course not.
I think it's more likely to happen if you were to say that definitely won't and everyone's doing great.
I'm just going to, as a disclaimer, of course, if they do that and it's discovered that they did it on purpose, I'm absolutely certain that even though this is supposed to be a for fun with no penalties type of race, they'll be administered some sort of punishment. So let's try to keep it clean up there. And of course, with as small as the gap is, I saw that the number 2 was involved.
Oh, I'm tapping over, trying to see if I can't catch. Looks like that's already cleaned up out of the source, but
we can't even get to the incidents quick enough.
No.
This is the problem that we have. Oh no.
I will say actually, if you watch endurance races, and you can see here, there are a lot of times where cars just bunch up and it just throws yellow flags, so they're not actually incidents.
Yeah,
So it
that
tends
can
to happen at the bus stop, tends to happen at the source. So maybe that wasn't really anything there. They just all got there at the same time.
right.
We've definitely had a couple of instances during the team series where we see a yellow flag thrown up on the broadcast for a car in front who just happened to maybe get caught up by some blue flag traffic. It gives me a slight heart attack for a little bit. I'm looking at, this is a battle for P6 actually, with Victor Diaz in front of Carr, Schwartz, and Barty. This is a whole thing going on, and I believe that's Austin Red in the mix. Indeed it is, who is one of the leaders of the cars that have already pitted. So this is actually a pretty big fight going on here.
It's interesting that we saw, McLarens and Porsches the only ones at top during the qualifying, and there they all still are. Maybe it's just because they got out in safety at the beginning of the race, but it sure looks like all the fastest drivers chose just 2 cars. Or at least the 2 fastest cars are just those, and anyone who's in them can go fast. Let's put it that way.
The cream is rising to the top for sure. That's the top 11 between the McLarens and the Porsches. But it's clearly not an easy Sunday drive. We were on board with Carr as he was going through Eau Rouge, and Radion had to get out of the gas just to make sure he stayed within track limits, and even still was on the limits of grip. It's not easy out there.
This is making me more and more glad that I didn't choose to participate in this race, if I'm being quite honest.
Gosh, it does seem like torture, I'm not gonna lie.
I'd be ripping out my hair. More BOP for the Macca and the Porsche?
Yes.
No. More BOP for the Macca, maybe the Porsche, though. No, sir.
No, let's
sir.
keep that one clean, right? No
Porsche,
bias.
I can speak from experience. I drove the 720S GT3 Evo last season. I'm driving the Porsche 992 this season, and I'm much more experienced now. Of course, I got a whole season of SRA under my belt. I haven't driven before, and my times are kind of comparable. All right, Porsche definitely not overpowered. Macca, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good car. Pretty good car.
For sure. As we check in with the leaders here of our different divisions, obviously Kanani, he's in the GT3 class, leading P1 overall. Arjun, though, in P11, he's in that Maserati GT2 class. He's got a couple tenths or a couple seconds over Guy Manperson. Michael Menning, P15 overall in that Porsche Cup car, putting on a show out here, putting on a clinic, showing how to race. He's quick, and I think it was that Dan Cran. Yeah, he's still second in the division. Clear divide there between the two drivers, but they've still yet to make their pit, so it's still all to play for as the pit cycles out.
It does look from the track map that those groupings of similar classes have sort of spread out, and usually that happens in these sort of races because as the faster cars come through, it's very difficult to maintain the same gap to the cars you're racing with while you let blue flags go. So unfortunately that can ruin your race a little bit, but hopefully they'll catch back up and get back into it. You know, you definitely want to, in a race like this, have as much time as you can racing against like the same class, same speed type drivers, just for the most fun.
Right, I mean, we're seeing that right here. Koo Dromo's right behind Jason Allen. And with who is that? I guess that's lap traffic in the KTM behind them, but they are as close as it gets. We're gonna follow them on board as we go through Eau Rouge and Radion. A little bit of flashers.
How is it that we had? Ooh, no way! The flashers. So much confidence there from Koa.
Yeah, just keeps it planted through the corner, but Jason Allen showing that he just got what it takes in that Maserati in front of him, pulls out a little bit of gap, but the draft's going to bring him right back into it. They're close on to braking, goes a bit deep. Jason Allen's going to keep the position for now.
I bet he wasn't expecting to be on the stream exactly as he's flashing somebody else there. It's a little bit shameful, you know?
I'll have you know. Yeah, I was just seeing that.
Drive penalty.
Robinson, he was our P2.
They just cleared their mandatory pit stop, so I can take a guess at what that might have been.
Little too quick on entry, more than likely. It's easy to do here, and that's going to be crushing for his results. He was obviously one of our clear front runners, and that's going to push him right back down the field.
So Dora's going to be happy about that one, though.
Yeah.
A little bit down the field, about 8 seconds. So that's going to be a free position. Granted, nothing happens. I mean, we're not even halfway in. We're just before the halfway point here. I'm not sure if I've got another half race in me at this point.
It's been a lot, right? We've seen a lot of action already, a lot of close racing, a bit of calamity, but that's to be expected around here. There's still battles all the way up and down the grid. We'll see if we can't get them documented.
Frankly,
Don't these lazy drivers know? These lazy drivers know it's tough on us to sit here and talk for this long. I mean, I wish they would, you know, at least acknowledge that, right?
You would think so.
In fairness, I think that my arms would probably be less tired comparatively to my brain. You know, I'm fried right now. I got nothing.
So to answer your chat, actually GT2 has less aero, I believe. So
yeah.
One of the things you see in races with GT2s is, yes, they can catch on the straights, but they have to brake way earlier than the GT3s. Once they're in the turns, they can't hold the same sort of lateral G-forces in those turns. They can't get on the gas as early. So because most of racing's pace difference is actually in the braking zone, trail braking, and getting back on the gas, just being able to push the pedal down and go fast in a straight line isn't all that helpful.
So an update. We've gone from 82 cars to 64 left on track.
It's a real race of attrition out here tonight.
Yeah. Ian Gilchrist, you're currently sitting in P last, my friend, but that's still 18 positions up from the very, very last. So I don't know what else there is to say about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna take a look at. We see Doyle. He's coming across to start his next new lap, but there's a lot of pitters getting their service done right now. I was curious to see where he'd fall out in the order, but our leader's staying out. I'm not gonna see it just yet.
Man, I could have finished in like P64. That's awesome.
Yeah, just tell everyone it started out at 82. You didn't have to tell them actually how many finished.
Can I just hop in the race server right at the end and still finish the race? Is that can we still maybe do that here?
Yeah, it's a solid result.
You could probably hop in, sit in the pits, come back and talk with us for a while, and with one lap left, go out and be like, oh, la-di-da-di-da.
Oh, Jackson Barty. That was a big cut from Jackson Barty, who was I think he's trying to get ahead of lap traffic in front. I don't know what's going on there. We flashed him towards the source, and there was still a fight from it.
That was incredible, though. Did you guys just see that? I mean, that McLaren just came through 2 cars, coming around the turn just to get on the outside, and still was able to pull off the overtake.
Yeah.
I mean, different speed cars, I'm sure, but when you do something like that, you lose so much of your momentum, and to just set it up perfectly like that, to just use the scalpel to get through, that is, you know, great racing. We love to see it.
Yeah, it's well done.
Spangler leads the pitters right now, and Kanani, the race leader, is in the pits at present. As well as,
The source?
am I seeing this correctly? Justin McKechnie, the 335, was in second place. That kind of shocks me. I'm not saying that McKechnie is a bad driver, but that is a shockingly high place to be for them.
It's got some
You know,
pace.
41 seconds back. That's probably more pits than anything.
Yeah, and he's in the pits getting his service done too.
Yeah, I was about to say we'll have to wait and see, because the in-game tracker might not be as good as it could. Jess Spangler's coming out of the source right now, and Kanani just going over the pit limit line. So this is actually going to be a little bit of a race, but I think Kanani should have this one.
Yeah, he's
as they get up to racing speed
weaving
on the
his way
chemistry.
around the top of Radion. He's gonna come out exit on the track, not at full speed yet. You see the GT3 Aston passing him there, but yeah, ahead of Spangler by
Small gap,
quite a
though.
bit.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
certainly
a small
there's no
gap.
way,
That's-
no way that
Oh,
you
it is
can
Spangler behind.
actually plan to come out in a gap like this. It's entirely luck in a race with this many people, unless you've got a very large gap between groups and somebody great in your ear or an app that works out really well telling you when to pit. But even then,
Oh,
it's pretty much luck. That was tight on the inside.
look at that. I mean, Kanani, I mean, provisional race leader right now. They're trying to get a gap to Spangler, but Spangler really wants to get to the lead. He's absolutely bashed the car behind out of the way. And
Taking no
they're gonna
prisoners.
stay on the tail. Oh my goodness, Spangler. That was my aggressive. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate, like, you want it, but come on.
Definitely doing a bit of a hip check out there, but he had the tire advantage and he saw the opportunity to catch up, close the gap to Kanani in front. Maybe a bit advantageous on the move there, but I mean, he's closed the gap right down. He's within a couple tenths.
Ooh, getting close to the diffuser.
Super tight on the Ferrari in front of him as they exit that corner there. Was probably really wanting that racing room to be left. Respectful driving now, but Kanani's pulling away as he's got the optimal line. Spangler's a bit compromised there as he goes through the Blanchimont straight.
I feel like there's an objective good and evil in this race now. I think that we've seen a clean race so far from Kanani. But Spangler has maybe gotten a little bit of argy-bargy. This
Yeah.
looks like it might... There's no way they go for a dive on this one, for sure.
He's
In
lining
towards
it
the
up
source.
around the outside, perhaps. Just a bit of extra room. Kanani goes defensive out in front. They'll hold the same positions for now, but he's going to get a big toe going into Eau Rouge.
Yeah, playing defensive is really difficult here, obviously, because every time there's some large straight, setting up getting on the throttle, getting that power out of whatever the last turn is entirely how you get to the end of the straight faster. So playing defensive can ruin the next 30 seconds of the lap.
Yeah, but
Looks like they pulled that off, though.
Yeah. At this point, these two drivers have got quite the gap between them and the car behind. Doyle, we were seeing him as he was one of the front runners in the first stint, but he's now pretty far back down the grid. These two drivers up front, though, they're trying to navigate their right way around these lap traffic. just finding the space to pull off the maneuver. There's nothing in it though.
Spangler knows. I mean, if they get to a point where the blue flag allows Kanani through, but Spangler does not also get through, that's going to be a gap generated. So you're just trying to stick up as close to the back of the car in front as you possibly can. Maybe not necessarily looking for an overtaking opportunity, but you just got to stay close enough so you can make that follow through, and ideally not have the same sort of incident that we saw at No Name last lap.
Right.
It certainly seems like in racing like this that there's sort of that if you try to move over to the next lane in the highway that's going faster, it ends up going slower. So you might lose a little bit of time when you get through a blue flag a little bit slower than the guy in front of you, but very commonly that comes back and slows them down to the next blue flag, and then you get to catch back up. Usually it's not someone getting all of the perfect pass-throughs.
Yeah.
I see Cockcroft is in the pit.
Yeah, okay, so he's our provisional leader right now, but he's one of the last few to get their service done. With this long pit stop, he'll end up right behind these leaders. So Kanani and Spangler, they will end up your battle for P1. Kanani's opened
It'd be
up a
great
bit
to
of a
get
gap.
some data from these drivers to find out, you know, did they feel like their tires lasted longer in a certain class, certain type car? Did they feel like their fuel was lasting longer? You know, things that we maybe wouldn't see that data in comparison with similar, like, you know, the same car classes. But now that we have enough of the same in each different group, it would be really cool to just see that data at the end of this race.
Yeah, for sure. And this is going to be, you know, pivotal data for next week's race around the same track here. Even though it's going to be in the rain, these drivers are going to have an advantage that, you know, people like us who maybe opted out of racing tonight, they're going to already understand the track a lot better, and have just that much more practice. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out next week.
Well, the rain has a way of equalizing things.
I always say that too. I like a good slidey track, and the rain's good for that.
Ooh, some more yellows down at the bus stop.
Moving around, I saw JP May went around, right around Blanchimont. And then, yeah, there's still a car around over by the bus stop right now. That's the 27, who I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah,
There was
Wow.
actually
looks like
a
it's
very large group.
Carbo. Maybe he was trying to get into the pits. Can't quite see him now, but that's car number 27 who was backwards for quite a bit there at the chicane.
Alu Tufo up in 6th right now, so clearly a rigged race. Sorry. Maybe I should stop making those jokes before they take me off the broadcast.
I imagine the slower of the top classes is now catching the backpack because those gaps are not really there anymore on the track map. There is one very large group of different classes that you wouldn't expect, you know, at this later in the race, other than the timing just sort of works out that they're finally catching each other.
So I'm trying to tab back over here to the leaders as we see they're super close. Still, they got down within 2/10 going down the Blanchimont. Wasn't able to make a move though, and Kanani will stay ahead.
But yeah, I mean, if you look back at, I'm going to say like literally the mid-pack, they have almost 20 cars, you know, maybe almost, maybe more. I have no idea. But all going in that group right there. And if you're this far into the race, you still have a half hour left, but you're this far in and you're still dealing with basically the same traffic you had at the start of the race. At least that's how it feels like, I'm sure, if you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's unrelenting around here. We're seeing a bit of gap form, which I'm sure is to these drivers' delight. But even still, as soon as you feel like you have that gap, there's going to be inevitably a car of a different pace in front of you or behind you.
Certainly won't last. I mean, well, here is the thing is, does Jeff Spangler actually enjoy that gap in front? Because obviously, if there's blue flags, the challenge is going to be in being able to follow through, you know, behind the car in front. But conversely, if the blue flag slows down the car in front just a slight bit more, because the car in front is the one that needs to cleave the gap to try and make that overtake on the inside of a corner. You have the opportunity to get up behind them, because if there's a little bit of a pace difference on corner exit, then Spangler can close up on that corner exit, because Kanani cannot get down on they necessarily cannot get down on the power as much as they normally would on the regular racing line. So it allows the number 9 to close up to the back of the car in front. So it's a little bit of give and take, and it might just present the opportunity that he needs. He hasn't been able to find it yet, but he clearly does have solid pace in relation to Kanani on just, raw, dry track.
He has been able to stick up right behind him. There's a whole train of traffic ahead of him. There's going to be a...
Oh.
I think we saw Kanani get a bit disconnected there, but he joins back. Okay, that's a good deal. Him and his internet are staying with us. It's really interesting to see how they navigate this traffic. It's a GT2 car in front of him, but on the brakes. It's going to end up right behind him.
Yeah, that's a big group they just caught up to. And it looks like we have something going on in the back around Puam. But something that I like watching, with the, ooh, okay, wait, we're seeing some yellows around. Maybe we should hop around a little bit, actually.
I'm looking for it. I can't find it. It was the 42. That's Velasco. Who? Oh wait, I could have sworn it was the 42, but the 42 is not registering for me anymore. They might have left the server. Not entirely sure on that one. I'll try to get an update for you in a second, but let me see if I can get. On that note, let me see if I can get an update on how many cars we have left. I believe it's still in the mid-60s range. Marecki has a stop-go 30 that I believe they're serving right now. Oh, this is. Oh, Spangler. Spangler. Right he wants this.
Dives on the inside. Doesn't quite have the overlap. Gonna stick back behind him. He's just poked his nose a little bit. He had a bit of drafting help from the cars in front of him. But Kanani is proving to be too strong of a force.
Well, I mean, something that I tend to do well with is like a rabbit to follow, right?
100%.
So I actually would maybe sit back and let, Kanani deal with getting these guys out of the way. You get to sit with a little bit more of a bigger view of the situation, so you can come up and follow them through, or decide to go on the inside or the outside and just sort of stay with them until possibly they make a big mistake, they get in a lot of bad luck, and you can take advantage of that. Really fighting tooth and nail is almost not advantageous sometimes.
Yeah, it's really easy to lose time. I mean, and they have an advantage right now between the people behind them, but it's sorry, I'm flipping around here a lot, trying to find the battle again. But they have an advantage by 10 seconds, so they have the space 2 battle here, but you definitely don't want to be losing time to the drivers behind you. Could open the gap for the next 3-car race if they're not careful.
But it looks like for P18, there's a 4-car race going there, all of them within a second of each other.
See if I can get that pulled up right now. That's Austin Red. That's a driver we've talked about once already at the very least. I do see that coming off the Camel straight out. I'll keep that up on the PIP for a little bit.
Yeah, real tight battle there. As we see all manners of calamity happening behind the lap traffic behind these leaders. They were, I think, 3 wide going into the chicane. They all managed to sort each other out.
Wow, already on that PIP, going around the outside for the last couple turns. That was great.
That's Boonstra.
She's going to have the inside line, the optimal line. Managed to get it woe down in time. Spots the braking, but it's going to open up the door for the car that was 3rd in this grouping to move up to 2nd. Mr. Sir on that comeback drive from the back of the pack, already up to P20.
That's a lower class of car as well. Getting past Austin Red, Mr. Sir. I mean, we knew he was a talented driver. Oh, that's a nice looking move there for Smith as well, trying to get around Austin Red, and he's tumbling down the order. He wants to fight back on it though. Austin Red, this is a talented driver. I'm expecting at least a little bit of a fight from Austin Red. If Selena Boonstra holds up Mr. Sir a little bit, that could allow Austin Red back into this train.
Yeah, really great racing there. Unfortunately for Red, falls down 2 positions.
Yeah, I mean, in a track like this, if you lose a little bit of momentum as someone, gets past you and you maybe made a mistake, it's really easy to just get beaten by a couple cars in a row like we saw. That momentum is so hard to catch back up to when you're offline, when you might be rolling over some of the marbles and you have to brake a little bit differently, or you're sliding around. So sometimes you just need to get back into it, take a deep breath, and attack again.
Mr. Sir in the inferior machinery as well. But he's still moving his way up the order. We talked about it. You know, he started from, I believe it was 77th in total from the grid. Up in 19th position right now. Oh no, not Cowley.
That is some damage.
It's a sad looking car right there. Looks like he just in the high speed section lost it and got into the wall. Unfortunate for them.
Hey, they're close to the pits, right? That's fine.
Yeah, they'll be able to just get in there and get their damage fixed. Hopefully to stick around. It's been a long race. You've gone so far. Why would you quit now, right?
Mr. Sir on the Camel Straight. Look at that. No contest for Boonstra. Cut and dry move. He's got it done.
We also still have at least 2 people I see that haven't pitted yet, so interesting to see what their strategy will be and if they actually finish higher than maybe they would have otherwise and they get the overcut, or if they've just completely sacrificed it.
Yeah, right. At this point, I mean, the optimal strategy was to pit maybe midway, either to change your tires or just to reset. But a long pit, maybe they found some gap and was able to set some hot laps. I'd be shocked if they were able to do that around here, but we'll see where they end up.
Looks like Van Sickle had a little bit of an off there at the bus stop chicane. Talking back to the GT4 class, I believe this is. I can't.
Yeah,
no.
Maybe.
Is it the GT? No. This is Guy Manperson.
Oh, that's GT2.
This is GT2. This is GT2. Guy Manperson with Arjun. Arjun did. He's in front of Guy Manperson right about now. 4 seconds. This is normally the point where I would tell you stuff like where they started in the race, if they moved around in positions, what their last lap time was in comparison to each other, as you can see them both on the screen. But I have none of that data at present, because I didn't take the notes at the beginning, and race control, as I said before, has failed us. So my apologies for that, but just know that there is an ongoing fight there for the lead of the GT2 class.
So Guy Manperson did qualify P1 for the GT2 class.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he
So
had
Arjun got around him at some
pace
point somehow.
advantage. Yeah, and ever since then, I think they've been pretty well close together, but Arjun's been able to keep that, healthy couple-second lead.
And are you seeing where the P1 qualifier for the 911 Cup cars is right now?
Michael Menning in P13 overall.
That is impressive.
Yeah, that's not bad for Michael Menning. I mean, showing that it doesn't matter the car. It's all about the driver behind the wheel. And I mean, P13 in a Cup car against a bunch of GT3s and GT2s. Yeah, showing you can get it done in anything.
Well, let me kind of challenge that notion, though. Surprising? No. Impressive? Yes. But surprising, I wouldn't necessarily say so.
Yeah, one of our fastest aliens for sure. Something to be expected. We had to nerf him for to put him in a Cup car so that someone else had a chance to win one of these things.
Man did a 2:20 in qualifying. I seem to recall the last season of qualifying, if you ran a 2:20, you were put in D4, D5 maybe. So this guy is running. That's D4, D5 drivers in GT3 cars. So being able to outrun, and then of course this is completely ignoring the fact that he's most likely run into a little bit of traffic where the GT3 cars are probably losing out in that traffic where the Porsche Cup is pretty much driving max speed or on the limit. So it's not necessarily surprising. He's got Robinson coming up immediately behind him, though. I think this should be a relatively cut and dry overtake with the 73. The Robinson, who was actually in the battle for the lead for a while before getting a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, he should be able to make his way through Michael Menning here. Just trying to find his gap. Around the outside, maybe? No, just going to get the more optimal line. They're racing like they're on the equal playing field, but Michael Menning in a car far inferior to the GT3. It's got a lot less downforce. It's actually pulling away from him in the straight. Without trash control, you would think that GT3 would be right there, but showing otherwise. Pulls away again coming out of La Source.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but does not the Porsche Cup actually have more brake horsepower than the Porsche GT3?
Maybe that's what we're seeing. That would make a lot more sense, right? As we're seeing him just find the gap.
But yeah.
Yeah. Looks
I
like
don't
it.
know if you guys have much experience with the reverse grid races. I've been in a couple. They're pretty fun. It's pretty scary when you're a slow driver that suddenly gets placed in the front with all the aliens coming up behind you. But rather than a reverse grid, it would be kind of great to have a reverse class race where all of our aliens are in the slowest classes, and everyone is the slowest people get to be in the fastest cars.
I
I
thought you
would
were going to say
definitely
putting
join
the
that.
M2s in the front of the grid to start, and I was going to say maybe that's not a good idea.
That would be
I don't know about that
chaos.
one.
No, but I like
no,
the idea of that. Yeah.
That's cool. We played in the OBDA conglomerate. They played around with the idea of that a little bit. I certainly think it would be a cool idea.
Well, it's something that I like watching, where's the sort of like pro versus amateur, right? And the pro is in like a Miata and the amateur's in like a 911 Cup car, and you see how close they can get. And it just shows that's what the experience is, that's what the skill is versus the car. And they're really cool to see that. But at the same time, driving those is always fun because you're being chased by someone in a much slower car with all that skill. That's fun. You're trying to chase after someone and you're in a much slower car. That's fun too.
I do think it's a bit ironic, though. I mean, you talk about the drivability of an MX-5 for a novice is probably going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit easier to get a handle on than, for instance, a Porsche Cup. But yeah, of course, I see the point in that. So definitely think it would be worth a shot in SRA.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Set
Less
that
than
up.
20 minutes to go here. We still tracking the lead fight. We haven't really looked at that in a minute, and it looks like Spangler is still being held at bay here. Actually, the gap has increased. I see about 1.6 seconds on my in-game tracker, but it's really difficult to tell, as I believe Spangler just closed up a little bit there. No surprises, realistically speaking.
Yeah, they're running into a bit of traffic, so as they navigate their way through there, the gap may be widened up a bit. Just monitoring his gap ahead. He's just trying to, wait for his opportunity to strike. 20 minutes left to go. He's running a bit out of time, but, he's still within striking distance.
The way this is played out at this point, there's only really one area of significant traffic. There's a couple small groups here and there, but I think most people have pretty clear air to keep running, which is got to feel really nice near the end of a race like this to try to kick back and, kind of gather your wits again. But there's still enough time. They're going to catch somebody again. They're going to get back in that traffic. These things tend to slinky and spread out and then come back in.
Ooh, Spangler's going for it on the bus stop. Tried the inside of Blanchimont, which showed the outside line towards the bus stop, but now they're side by side looking towards the source at the moment. Spangler going to most likely be trying for the switchback here, maybe even the long way around the outside. Spangler up against Kanani still towards Eau Rouge at the moment. They might have enough of the toe. We've seen it before. It looks like they got clean air enough in front of them where a move might be on here.
Through Eau Rouge, this
Peeking
is
on the inside,
dicey.
but he'll lift.
Yeah, I mean, that just shows the skill of doing that because I was in a wall if I was in that.
Yeah, 100%. That was some respectful driving from the two drivers here. Expect
Double
nothing
yellow
less.
ahead, that's not good.
Might put a wrench in the gears. Trying to find the numbers on that one. That was the 272. That's Donovan Colton, I know for a fact.
Something we need to keep an eye out for. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, but specifically now when we've had those two front runners fighting for so long, and they might be running a little bit wide here and then a little bit, narrow here, there could be a drive-through coming through for one, maybe both of them by the end of this race if they're fighting and gaining, position or gaining speed by going too far off track. So hopefully they're being cautious and they're keeping an eye on those warnings.
Yeah, it's something to watch. I mean, we've seen Spangler. He had to cut Radion a few times just to make sure he stayed on track. The smart move, but maybe picked up a drive-through or at least a track cut here and there. No drive-through yet, but could be on the limit maybe, and that's what he's got to be a bit conservative. It could be the case for a lot of these drivers, as it's easy to do here.
I think actually Spangler sort of has a benefit there, as he's maybe trying to go around that side
a
in
bit
traffic.
wide. Yeah, he's gonna try to use the Aston as a pick. He's got the inside done. Kanani's not liking it. The Aston just gets out the way. He's like, I'm not trying to be a part of this. But with Spangler, the optimal line, he's gonna stay barely within tracks. Kanani goes way wide. Spangler's got the gap and got the move done going into the chicane.
Oh, but this race is not over yet. That is not done.
15 minutes to go. It's still all to play for.
Yeah, actually, something I do really like about playing the, chase the rabbit game is as I'm, oh wow, inside of Lasource, but runs a bit wide. That is very typical there, a little bit too far of a dive, just getting his braking zone wrong, and maybe catching back up going offline, as we were just talking about.
They're still side by side. I wonder if the same amount of respects can be shown, as they don't.
Oh.
Spangler's going to go wide through Eau Rouge. That's going to leave him into the wall. He's going to lose a ton of spots and gain a ton of damage.
Was not nearly as bad as I was expecting, but obviously that race is over there, at least between the two of them.
Yeah, we saw Kanani. He went wide into La Source, but that was able to at least put him side by side as they go onto the straight into Eau Rouge. They were, I mean, just bumpers overlapping there, and as Kanani stayed on the inside for Eau Rouge, just no space is given. Spangler caught the front of him, and he'll go wide. And I mean, that's an 8-second gap that pretty well seals that battle there. Kanani, though, made the move done, got the move done, and he's P1.
I do have to wonder, if it wasn't for the fact that we've already seen One Stop Go 30 administer this race, I would be questioning if track limits violations were even enabled on the server right now. Because Kanani went well wide at the source. I mean, it's fairly obvious, you went for that massive dive, and sure, you washed out wide, but they didn't really lose a whole lot of time. In fact, they got up, as we mentioned, side by side with Spangler, so very clearly gained an advantage on that one. For instance, if I was stewarding this race, I'd be taking a closer look at that.
Yeah, it makes
especially
you wonder.
with the Blanchimont exit, earlier in the previous lap.
I would expect that one was definitely a warning, but certainly when you're following somebody and you're going wide because you have to lift a little bit or you've messed up your braking, you almost always lose time, and the game is pretty good at saying, went out but didn't gain time, etc. So certainly I think we've seen a few, but if you're usually seeing that from the guy who is chasing someone, they're not going to get those warnings as often because they're usually having to lift or take some sort of avoiding action. In this case, though, I think that, stop and go 30 or any sort of penalty might have been warranted just for the aggressive driving there.
Well, one thing's for sure is for Kanani at this point, even if you have 3 warnings, well, guess what? You don't need to push anymore because you know that the competition is well behind.
I think we just saw... Oh, I'm going to have to try to tab over to it.
Wait, why is the leader white and yellow in La Source?
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of other yellow.
Oh, no. I see that.
It's all manners of chaos.
Kanani looks like they got through.
But I think we missed it, but Kanani is now second behind Spangler, who's got back into the lead. I sure do wish race control was working, as you could have saw what happened there. I mean, it looked like he caught up in La Source. As we see, Spangler actually gets into the lap traffic there again. It's all popping off here. We're seeing more lead changes in one lap now than we have yet, but it's all because there's been damage and calamity and all collisions happening with the leaders.
Was that? No, that wasn't Boonster. Who was that?
No, that wasn't Agrello. I was trying to see that too.
I think it was Matt Mattisey there in the Porsche Cup. Oh, yep. His tires are roasted, and he's going to go into the wall again. Unfortunate for him. So it was Kanani, then it was Spangler for half a sector, and then it's back to Kanani.
I think the leaders just maybe got a little bit of red mist after fighting for so long, and certainly damaged their, tires and such after fighting for so long. Then damaged their cars after fighting other people for about 2 seconds. And at this point, who knows what's going to happen? If I'm, Martin back there in P3 in the Porsche, I'm going for gold.
Yeah, he's licking his lips down there, which waiting for something. I mean, that's the battle for the lead now between all the calamity we saw. They had a 13-second gap before, but now Martin has right up behind Kanani within 4/10.
Yeah, presumably with no damage at this point. So
yeah,
if you've seen how quickly you've gained time on those cars in front of you that were way ahead the entire time, you probably know something happens. You might have even seen it. Just got to take your time and expect that you're going to get past him here. Don't take too many risks.
As we're seeing Kanani miss his
be it.
braking zone there. Martin's getting the better line. He's got the optimal line into the inside here of Lasource. They're going to go side by side into turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Kanani just needed to give that to him anyway, like legally, but who knows if they're following that at this point.
Yeah, there's no real rules with this one. You know, if it was a real night, they'd put it to the stewards and let them decide, but
Legality can stuff it. And speaking of, there goes Kanani. That's got to be a track cut. There's no way.
you would think
Right.
he's still right behind him.
Maybe he's a leprechaun.
He's even going to take the toe down Blanc Chemin. He's going to peek to the inside. Kanani, though, not going to make the move. The Porsche
I'm telling
gets
you,
super loose.
he's a leprechaun. He's got the luck of the Irish.
Somehow.
It must have just been a case. You talked about leaders getting a bit of a red mist. I mean, surely once everything began to kick off, it all becomes a case of, hop on the opportunity. I have to capitalize. And suddenly this very careful and calculated mental battle. I've seen this in other, sports and esports before, where you spend so long doing this cold, calculated fight for so long that eventually when something breaks, your mental just shatters. Everything is out the window, and you are just going for it and going for it and going for it, and you let yourself a little bit too loose, and you end up having these incidents.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the red mist or just a momentary lapse of conversation or of concentration, you're just on full-on survival at that point. These people, these drivers, they've already invested over an hour into this race, and to have it all almost fall apart right when you think you have it all, it's got to be frustrating. Especially to see Martin just pull off. He's now almost a second ahead of Kanani here.
Well, certainly one of the things that happens when you're in a fight for so long is you do sort of learn the other person's driving, but as soon as you're no longer with that person, you suddenly have to contend with someone's new braking points and someone's new, ways to go through turns. And especially if you're going through blue flags as well, there's all those things to contend with that you may not have had to do for the last 10, 20, 30 minutes.
See, stop go 30
some...
for Meyer, drive through for Cowley. Things going wild. And speaking of, my race control is fully died now, so number 56, the 296 of Mike Cowley's, I guess, the last car you're going to see in the picture-in-picture for today. 07, picture-in-picture. You were great while you lasted.
Oh, it's just to top it all off here with 8 minutes to go.
Who would have thunk it?
It's been fun. Yeah, as we try to navigate through here, we're also on full-on survival mode. Our computers in the server just stressed to the max here tonight.
Meyer was one of, if not the last person to pit, which I'm guessing means they sped in the pits, and whatever plan they had to go along and see if they could recover something means they're going to probably drop another 5 or 10 places back at this point. That's tough. Wait an entire race to pit, and then you just blow it with 10 minutes or less left.
It's very unfortunate. I'm seeing a bit of calamity going on back here.
Yeah.
That's Wheeler off into the kitty litter. Oh, I lost him.
I've never heard it referred to that before. That's pretty awesome, I'll say. And I have figured out how to cycle through cars with just the in-game. So
Yeah.
huzzah for that.
Shift arrow keys. It's not pretty, and I'm sorry for any confusion as the viewers, but
Yes.
it's what we're resorted to at the end of here. I was gonna comment, Guy Manperson was able to make it around Arjun within the last couple minutes, so now he's the leader of our GT2 class. We saw that battle earlier where Arjun was able to stay out in front, but whether it was strategy or just traffic, was able to get ahead of him.
We've had a couple requests to get on board with McKenzie, and actually he was in a bit of a gap now. He is right behind someone, and he is behind Mike Money. And right behind him is also someone within a second. This is a real fight to take a look at.
See if I can't grab him. Stand by one.
Gotta do the good old-fashioned manually scroll through the entire field.
There we go. There's McCheckney right there.
50 on cars.
Yeah, coming right up on our 992 Cup, I guess, leader. Is he in a Cup car also, or is he in a GT3?
Looks like he's in the
think
GT3 car.
Yeah.
Benning? In the Porsche Cup?
Yeah, he's leading McKenzie here in a GT3, we think.
Indeed. 60s off. Helicombe.
Oof, right in front of the leader coming in too.
I want to see if I can catch that. That's Kyle Cumber. Beginning of the race, it was Kanani. Jeff Spangler moved up, I believe, from lower down in the order. But Zachary Martin, in the final 5 minutes of the race with about a 2-second gap behind, ends up being... We didn't even talk about this driver. This is the first time we pretty much said their name the entire race.
And now he's leading
there was a big
overall.
gap to those guys.
I mean, it was a story of the McLarens, not so much the Porsche. There was a bit of them in the top 10, but showing that in these longer style races, it's not so much about outright pace, especially with the big grid like it is tonight. It's about how you navigate the traffic and then ultimately survive and make it the whole way through.
What is great about this little race that we're watching right now, though, is you are seeing different class cars, but with similar skill drivers, I believe, especially if they're still racing this well at this point. And you're seeing that they're just keeping up with each other, even though you'd expect one to have an advantage.
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, there's a drive-through for one of the other drivers just near this race.
Mike
We expected those to
Gino,
come near the end.
with 4 minutes to go, picks up one more track cut that sets him over the edge for a drive-through. That's gonna
I think
hurt.
he's having a battle with Selena behind. Gap was 1.4 seconds, according to my relative right now. While the number 2's got a yellow in the back.
Yeah. And a
Number
50-second
141.
drive-through.
Oh, he's right on the racing line at the exit of the last corner. He's gonna pull out. Was that Draven Doyle in the Porsche?
It was Frederick Ma.
Oh, okay, Frederick Ma. Even
And
still.
I think Doyle got involved in that. I think Doyle was the unfortunate victim of that one, but yes.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, so that 50-second drive-through is going to pop Gino back into probably the 30s or 40s or such. Looks like Meyer still hasn't taken their SG30, and what is it if you don't take it at the end? What is that worth?
I think it's 130 seconds, if I'm not mistaken.
Oof.
I got 130 seconds for not serving a mandatory pit stop.
Oh,
one
you're
race,
right.
But I don't know if you get 130 for the stop go 30.
Where is... Oh, here we go.
I'll tune into him. Yeah, you're right. He's peaking. I mean, he's pulled up 2 seconds within the last 2 minutes. And he's right on the back of Guy Manperson.
We somehow missed this. Guy Manperson got past Arjun?
Yeah.
At one point.
Yeah, a couple minutes ago, they were past each other. Guy was able to pull out a 2-second gap on Arjun, but clearly Arjun's got the pace. He's closed that gap right up, and now he's right on the back of him going down the Kimmel Straight.
One cool overall thing to see with these two here is that we saw them neck and neck in qualifying, and now you're seeing that obviously they're not just one lap qualifying only. They are full-on racers, full-on rounded out, and this is a fun fight to have in the last 2 minutes here.
Yeah, just on board with Arjun here. This car looks difficult. He's sliding all over the place. These tires are obviously worn, trying to find any grip whatsoever.
The Maserati GT2 is a very lively car.
It clearly shows.
I mean, people, initial impressions at the very least were that it was one of the stronger GT2s, and now we are on the white flag lap, the number 41 cross a line for the final lap of the big grid event. 82 minutes it's been, and I gotta say I'm quite glad that it's almost over. It has been a crazy ride in many, many different aspects, but Arjun wants this one from Guy Manperson.
It's also at least the third or fourth time I've seen the 912 car with the yellow flag, and almost always at the bus stop as they move slowly around the main straight now. That's a tough race for them to have that many missteps.
So as you
It sounds like we've had a lot of freezes and disconnects too in this race, unfortunately.
yeah, that can happen. Oh, we saw one car just loop it at a Lacombe chicane there.
So the 512
Missed who that was.
had a
yeah.
moment as well. Or maybe a bit more than that. John Ansem, I think, went fully round. Just about.
John, no.
Colin Dunham behind Eric Rutherham right now, battling for 34th position. It looks like that might be a cut and dry. It looks like it's a Porsche Cup actually versus a GT3.
They go too wide through Radion. That's hard to do, but they all still keep on track. Very respectful driving, and they'll end up right behind each other. Oh, as we see, they both go off track sympathetically.
I'm trying to get back on board with Guy, and I don't know where they've gotten off to.
You know, I will say we were talking about
knows?
interviews earlier. I would like to have an interview here with Martin and be like, hey, did you expect to win the race?
Right? I don't think that was going to be in the cards for him as when he started this race. He wasn't at the front, but through it all, he comes out. I mean, he's got one corner to go, essentially.
Porky go vroom indeed.
That's gonna feel good, though.
Yeah, Zach Martin across the line. He'll come home P1 overall of this Spa Big Grid event. He's got to be stoked for that one. As you see a little wiggle. Yeah, absolutely.
See if we can get
well
the Guy
done.
Man-Person race back on the main screen.
Kanani will come home P2. Everyone's getting their final laps in. Trying to find him. Doyle, it looks like he'll come home P5.
I've got Guy and Arjun on the PIP for now. Guy maintaining the lead right now, in towards Sector 3. Arjun needs to find something here. I just don't see it in it. Maybe a little bit better exit. This is going to have to be a move into the bus stop, but Guy knows it. Guy's probably going to go fully defensive. Arjun might have had a little bit of a better run with the tow. There's slower traffic in the way, and Arjun falls well behind here before Blanchimont. I think Guy Man-Person should pretty much have this one locked down unless he messes up his braking zone.
There's one
in the bus
move
stop.
left. He's not going to go for it. As
Oh,
Guy
he went
goes
deep.
wide
Oh,
around the outside.
That just
Oh.
made drag race down to the line. I think Arjun has it.
It's too close to tell.
Arjun got it. You gotta be kidding. By 1,000th of a second.
Well done.
1,000th of a second.
That was a little bit of a squeeze, but a great, great race. And oh my God, look who got the stop go 30 plus 133.
I just saw that Michael Manning.
That is unfortunate.
You hate to see that. He ended up P12 overall, but with that 133 second penalty, that's going to push him right down the field.
Oh
Wow,
my
I'm so
God.
glad we got to that race in the end. That was
great action to end it
exciting
off.
finish.
Jeez.
To catch the
I
last
believe-
few runners coming across the line.
Where did Menning ended up finishing? That's my question right now. I'm seeing a lot of donuts right now. There's some drivers. Kim here, the 29, finished in 46, doing donuts. I mean,
It's a celebration for us all just to be at the
Why
end
not?
here.
yeah, that's you can say that again. Menning ended up. Oh, I didn't realize that was who. When you said to check out who ended up with the 133-second
Oh, yeah.
increase in their time, I did not realize that's who you were talking about. That hurts.
You hate
That
to see
hurts.
it.
That's what, 80 minutes of running in the lead of the 911 Cup cars, 80 minutes of running in the lead of a lot of other cars that maybe you should be slower than just based off of class, and throwing it away, unfortunately, at the very end.
Well, you can go ahead and kill my PIP. I'm glad to say those words.
Yeah, it was a
That's-
fun time here tonight. But I'm happy to say that it's over, and congrats to Zach Martin who finished P1 overall. Arjun with that great battle at the end there to finish P1 and GT2 class. That was great by him.
That was ultimate.
Let's see.
I don't know where they found the grip.
Yeah, around the outside, no less. That was fantastic. Let's see. In GT4, looks like Carbo ends up as the lead in that one. Finishes well ahead of O'Neill. Michael Manning, even with the penalty, looks like he still finishes P1.
Wow.
Which just shows you the pace he had. As you say, GT2 Arjun, he'll finish P1. And then Evan, Kim, and Doug, the division to themselves.
So what was that time difference in GT2?
GT2 is 1/1000th of a second. It doesn't get any closer than that.
I was going to say, I bet it's less, and then that's just rounding up.
Yeah,
You know what though? I think Guy might have something to say about it in the chat afterwards, because we did see Arjun, you stuck it around the outside, but it looked like there was a little bit of a door bang on corner exit, and that may have influenced the rear traction for Guy Manperson just a little bit, or the direction of the car on the initial launch. And, we're not talking about very much of an influence here. But when you're talking in thousands of seconds of a difference down the line, every little bit of traction counts.
Yeah, that was all that was in it. And to say that after, 80 some odd minutes that it comes down to that was crazy. These drivers put on a show for us tonight, and ultimately it could have gone better. We saw a bit of carnage here and there, but it was a great race overall, and I just want to thank these drivers for participating.
That's about the most generic and probably accurate summary that you could give for the race. Could have gone better. Could have gone a lot worse, granted. I mean, lap 1 was shockingly clean through Rouge and Radion up to a point.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I don't know
massively
how often
impressive.
you guys have had this happen where you lose the position that you're in the last turn on the last lap, but unfortunately for me, it's a lot. And even though there was some of that rubbing right there, I do have to say that the Guy Manperson sort of did the thing that I am constantly doing, just overthinking at the very last second, braking just a little bit too late, thinking, oh, I can do this, I'm ahead, I can finish this off. And he went deep. And yeah, I mean, might have had a little bit of rub after, but he sort of invited it in. That would not have happened if he was able to make that through cleanly, So I would say racing incident.
Sounds like victim blaming to me, but we'll let the stewards decide.
Yeah, it'll be a fun chat for that one as these drivers all, call it into the night here. Want to thank you all for tuning in for this race and the calamity that ensued. I want to, of course, thanks again to our sponsors here. We talked about them before, but Documise, AT3D, who else? Armamentario, everyone that's a part of this SRA community that helps put these things on. And thank you to all for tuning in. It's been fun. And with that, I hope you all have a good night, and we'll see you on the next one.